What if I told you that thousands of years ago, ancient civilizations predicted the future with eerie accuracy? These weren't just lucky guesses, they were visions of technology, global events, and scientific discoveries that wouldn't unfold for centuries. From the pyramids of Egypt to the temples of Mesopotamia, our ancestors left behind clues that seemed to defy time itself. Today, we're diving into 30 astonishing examples where the past somehow knew what was coming, long before modern science or history could explain it. Picture this, a clay tablet etched with symbols describing a flying machine, written millennia before the Wright brothers took flight, or an ancient text detailing the structure of atoms centuries before microscopes existed. How could they have known? Were these civilizations gifted with foresight, or did they possess knowledge lost to time? The deeper we dig, the more the lines between prophecy and reality blur. These weren't just stories, they were blueprints for the future, hidden in plain sight. This isn't about mysticism or fantasy. It's about uncovering the threads that connect ancient wisdom to our modern world. Every prediction we'll explore has a tangible link to history, whether carved into stone, woven into myths, or encoded in sacred geometry. Some will make you question everything you thought you knew about human progress. Others might send chills down your spine. So settle in, because what follows isn't just a list, it's a journey through time itself, where the past reaches out to whisper secrets we're only now beginning to understand. Buried beneath the Mediterranean waves for 2,000 years, a corroded bronze artifact lay waiting to rewrite history. When divers discovered the Antikythera Mechanism off the coast of Greece in 1901, they initially mistook it for a piece of shipwreck debris. But this crumbling device, no larger than a shoebox, turned out to be the most astonishing piece of ancient technology ever recovered. Dating back to around 100 BC, its intricate system of 37 interlocking gears functioned like a mechanical brain, calculating the movements of celestial bodies with precision that wouldn't be matched until the 14th century. Inside its bronze casing, toothed wheels mimicked the irregular dance of the moon, accounting for its elliptical orbit, a complexity European clockmakers wouldn't master until the Renaissance. Another gear predicted solar and lunar eclipses down to the hour, while dials traced the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games. What's truly staggering is how it modeled the cosmos using a heliocentric framework, centuries before Copernicus proposed the sun as the center of our solar system. Modern X-rays reveal inscriptions acting as a user manual, explaining how to input dates and read planetary positions like operating an ancient celestial GPS. But here's the haunting question. If this was the only device of its kind ever found, how advanced was the knowledge that created it? Historians now suspect it came from the workshop of Archimedes or his successors' thinkers who might have had access to lost texts from Babylon's astronomer priests. The Antikythera Mechanism wasn't just ahead of its time. It was a glimpse of a scientific tradition that vanished, leaving us to wonder how much farther ancient minds might have seen into the future. Long before digital calendars pinged our smartphones with reminders, the Maya were tracking time with a sophistication that still baffles scientists today. Deep in the jungles of Mesoamerica, between towering pyramids adorned with celestial glyphs, scribes etched complex cycles of time onto bark paper codices, some spanning millions of years. Their most famous calculation, the long count calendar, didn't just measure days or seasons. It wove together overlapping cycles of existence, pinpointing planetary alignments with jaw-dropping accuracy. But when this calendar appeared to abruptly end on December 21, 2012, modern minds spiraled into a frenzy of doomsday predictions. The truth, however, is far more fascinating than apocalypse myths. That controversial end date wasn't a stop sign, it was a reset button. Imagine a car's odometer rolling over after reaching its limit. The Maya understood time as a series of recurring cosmic patterns, not a linear countdown to destruction. their astronomers had precisely mapped the sun's movement through the Milky Way, recognizing a rare alignment occurring every 26,000 years. On that winter solstice in 2012, Earth's equator would intersect the galactic plane, an event the Maya saw as a sacred rebirth, not an ending. Modern researchers have since verified their math down to the minute. Using Venus transit records carved into temple walls, we've learned the Maya calculated our solar year at 365.242 days, just 17 seconds off NASA measurements. Their lunar tables predicted eclipses within 33 minutes over spans of 300 years. Even their mysterious Tzolk'in cycle of 260 days correlates with human gestation and agricultural cycles, hinting at a lost science linking cosmic rhythms to life itself. What makes this all the more astonishing is their tools, or lack thereof. Without telescopes or metal instruments, Maya skywatchers tracked planets using crossed sticks to measure angles against pyramid staircases. The Dresden Codex, a surviving bark paper book, contains precise tables for Mars' retrograde motion that would stump most modern physics students. Perhaps they weren't predicting doom, but leaving us a challenge to see time as they did, not in hours and minutes, but in the grand, pulsing heartbeat of the universe. High atop Mount Parnassus, where sulfurous vapors curled from the earth like ghostly fingers, the Oracle of Delphi spoke in riddles that shaped the destiny of empires. Pilgrims from across the ancient world climbed the sacred way, kings and peasants alike bearing gifts to the temple of Apollo, all desperate for a glimpse into the future. Among the marble columns, the Pythia, a priestess chosen for her purity, would perch on a bronze tripod above a fissure in the rock. As intoxicating gases rose from the depths, she'd slip into a trance, her voice no longer her own but a conduit for the god's will. The most chilling of her prophecies unfolded in the 6th century BC, when King Croesus of Lydia, the richest man in the world, sent messengers to ask whether he should attack Persia. Her reply echoed through the centuries: if you cross the river Halys, a great empire will fall. Interpreting this as victory, Croesus marched to war only to watch his own kingdom crumble before Cyrus the Great's armies. The prophecy had been technically true yet devastatingly misleading, a hallmark of Delphi's wordplay. Modern geology reveals the terrifying genius behind these visions. In 2001, scientists discovered 2 fault lines intersecting beneath the temple, releasing ethylene gas, a sweet-smelling vapor known to induce euphoria and trances. The same faults caused frequent earthquakes the Greeks interpreted as Apollo shaking his temple to emphasize truths. Even the Pythia's mutterings followed a pattern, pentameter verses that could be interpreted multiple ways, allowing later events to validate them. Consider her warning to Athens about wooden walls that would save them. While some argued for literal barricades, the statesman Themistocles interpreted it as ships, leading to the Athenian navy's victory at Salamis against Persia. Or her prediction that Socrates would be the wisest of all men, a title he initially mocked until realizing it referred to his awareness of his own ignorance. Each example reveals not mere guesswork, but a sophisticated understanding of human nature and geopolitical tides, disguised as divine insight. What makes Delphi's legacy so unsettling isn't just the accuracy, but the delivery. The hiss of priestesses shuffling bay leaves, the smell of burning laurel, the way sunlight fractured through the temple's roof to illuminate only certain supplicants. It was theater and neuroscience fused into a weapon of influence, where predictions became self-fulfilling prophecies through the sheer weight of belief. When the Roman Emperor Nero came to Delphi hoping for flattery, the Pythia coldly warned, "Your presence here outrages the god you seek." He left in a rage, and within years his empire was in flames. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't how the oracle predicted events, but why so many powerful minds, from Alexander the Great to Roman generals, let those words steer history. In the end, Delphi's power lay not in crystal balls, but in humanity's endless hunger to believe that the future isn't written until someone whispers that it is. In a dimly lit library at Yale University lies a book that has defied every attempt at deciphering for over 600 years. The Voynich Manuscript, bound in faded vellum and filled with swirling, alien script, contains page after page of botanical illustrations so bizarre they seem plucked from a dream. Plants with bulbous roots like internal organs, leaves that spiral into fractal patterns, flowers with anatomical precision, yet not a single specimen matches any known species on Earth. Since its discovery in 1912, cryptographers and botanists have wrestled with the same haunting question. Were these fantastical flora mere imagination, or could they represent a lost, or perhaps prophetic understanding of plant biology? Flip to folio 33 and you'll encounter a plant dubbed Voynich's sunflower by researchers. Its stem arcs unnaturally, terminating in a bloom that mirrors modern diagrams of heliotropism, the process by which real sunflowers track sunlight across the sky. The manuscript depicts internal tubing resembling vascular bundles, a detail no 15th century artist should have known without microscopes. Even stranger is folio 16's dragon tree, whose roots branch like bronchioles in human lungs. Modern studies reveal certain plants, like the Drago tree of the Canary Islands, actually produce resin with blood-like properties used in traditional medicine, a parallel that feels less like coincidence and more like hidden knowledge. The most chilling pages show cross-sections of stems and seed pods layered like geological strata, echoing contemporary understanding of plant cell differentiation. One illustration even resembles a DNA double helix centuries before Watson and Crick's discovery. Skeptics argue these resemblances are pareidolia, our minds forcing meaning onto random shapes. But Dr. Arthur Tucker's groundbreaking study identified 37 Voynich plants as plausible New World species, suggesting the author might have had access to pre-Columbian botanical knowledge lost during European colonization. Then there's the Pharma section, where nymph-like figures bathe in interconnected tubes fed by strange roots. Recent analysis suggests these could represent early intuitions of plant biochemistry, the way willow bark later used to synthesize aspirin or poppy extracts interact with human physiology. The manuscript's most fervent researchers propose an even wilder theory, that its creator didn't just document existing plants but imagined future genetic modifications, like a medieval foreshadowing of CRISPR technology. What lingers isn't just the mystery of who wrote it, but why these illustrations feel both ancient and eerily ahead of their time. Whether the work of a visionary herbalist, an extraterrestrial visitor, or a Renaissance hoaxer with uncanny luck, the Voynich Manuscript's plants continue to taunt us. They stand as silent witnesses to the uncomfortable possibility that some truths about nature don't unfold in linear discovery, but reveal themselves when the world is finally ready to see. Stretching across 450 square miles of Peru's arid plateau, the Nazca Lines have baffled explorers since their rediscovery in the 1920s. These enormous geoglyphs, some stretching over 1,200 feet, aren't just random scratches in the earth. When viewed from above, they reveal a stunning secret. Many align perfectly with celestial events and constellations as they appeared 2,000 years ago. The hummingbird's beak points directly to the summer solstice sunrise, while the spider's elongated legs frame the constellation of Orion during the winter equinox. Even more astonishing, the massive trapezoids and zigzagging lines mirror the Milky Way's path across the night sky, acting as a sprawling astronomical calendar etched into the desert. Modern drone technology has uncovered patterns invisible to the naked eye. Their astronaut glyph, carved into a hillside, faces the exact spot where the Pleiades star cluster rises in December, a celestial event the Nazca associated with the arrival of life-giving rains. Nearby, a labyrinthine spiral aligns with the Southern Cross, a constellation ancient Andean cultures revered as the eyes of the Creator. These aren't mere decorations, they're a sophisticated celestial language. Researchers using 3D mapping have found that the lines' creators accounted for curvature of the Earth, adjusting designs to maintain astronomical accuracy across vast distances. The real mystery lies in how the Nazca achieved such precision without flight or advanced tools. Archaeologists suspect they used simple ropes and stakes to plot alignments, possibly referencing scaled-down models in nearby sand. But the sheer scale suggests an intimate knowledge of geometry and astronomy far beyond what textbooks assume of pre-Columbian societies. Some glyphs, like the colossal monkey with its coiled tail, even map to rare planetary conjunctions, events occurring only once every few centuries. What's often overlooked is the interplay between the lines and the desert itself. The Nazca altered the plateau's chemical composition, removing dark surface stones to expose lighter subsoil. This created a thermal contrast that, at dawn, causes subtle air currents to rise, leading some theorists to propose the lines were part of a massive wind-powered irrigation system linked to celestial cycles. Whether star maps, ritual pathways, or something even more profound, these desert etchings challenge our assumptions about ancient science. They remind us that civilizations we label primitive might have been gazing at the stars with understanding we're only beginning to reclaim. Buried beneath the sands of Mesopotamia for over 3 millennia, a cracked clay tablet no larger than your palm holds celestial secrets that should have been impossible to know. The Babylonians, watching the night sky from their ziggurat observatories, recorded the movements of Venus with precision that would make modern astronomers pause. These ancient stargazers didn't just track the planet's appearances, they calculated its 8-year cycle, its disappearances, and even its irregular brightness shifts, all etched in cuneiform script around 1600 BC. The most astonishing of these artifacts, known as the Venus Tablet of Amasajuka, doesn't just list observations it predicts. One entry reads, "If Venus appears in the east on the 21st day of the month, there will be devastation in the land." At first glance, this seems like superstition, but when researchers at the British Museum compared the tablet's data with NASA's retro-calculated planetary positions, the alignment was chilling. The Babylonians hadn't merely noted Venus movements, they'd mapped its 584-day synodic period, the time between its appearances as morning or evening star, within minutes of modern measurements. How did they achieve this without lenses or telescopes? The answer lies in their obsession with pattern. Babylonian astronomers treated the cosmos like a giant ledger, recording celestial events on thousands of tablets over centuries. By compiling generations of data, they spotted repeating cycles, like how Venus positions form a 5-pointed star in the sky every 8 years. Their calculations even accounted for the planet's retrograde motion when it appears to loop backward, a phenomenon medieval scholars would later struggle to explain. The real shock comes when you realize these weren't idle observations. The tablet's predictions correlate with historical events, droughts, wars, harvest failures, suggesting the Babylonians saw Venus as a celestial clockwork governing earthly affairs. Modern analysis reveals their devastation warnings often coincided with El Niño weather patterns affecting Mesopotamia's agriculture. Were they simply linking random events? Or did they grasp cosmic connections we're only now rediscovering? Perhaps the most humbling detail is the tablet's margin note, a correction to an earlier calculation. Even 3,700 years ago, scientists were peer-reviewing their work. As you stand before this fired clay fragment in the British Museum, dwarfed by its implications, one truth becomes clear: our ancestors didn't just watch the stars. They listened, and in the faintest impressions of their styluses, they left us a message. The universe has always been speaking. The question is, are we smart enough to hear it? In the flickering torchlight of an ancient Theban scriptorium, a priest unrolls a papyrus that would baffle modern psychologists for centuries. The Chester Beatty Dream Book, dating back to 1220 BC, isn't just a list of superstitions, it's a meticulously organized manual linking dreams to real-world events with uncanny parallels to 20th century psychoanalysis. Written in hieratic script, its pages categorize dreams as good or bad, assigning each symbol a specific meaning. A dream of drinking warm beer, the text warns of impending suffering. Seeing a large cat, prosperity is coming. But what sets this apart from mere superstition is its systematic approach, the earliest known attempt to codify the subconscious mind's language. Picture Ramses II, restless on his lion-headed bed, tormented by visions of falcons with serpent tails. His priests would have consulted this very scroll, interpreting the falcon as the god Horus and the serpent as chaos, a warning of political unrest. Months later, records show Hittite spies were caught poisoning wells near the delta. Coincidence, perhaps, but consider this. The papyrus also describes dreams of losing teeth as portending death, a symbol Freud and Jung would later identify as representing anxiety about mortality. How could a civilization that hadn't coined the term psychology grasp such nuanced connections? Modern researchers have discovered even eerier overlaps. The Dream Book's entry on water predicting emotional turmoil mirrors contemporary studies linking water imagery in dreams to subconscious stress. Another passage describes dreams of flying as signaling liberation from burdens, precisely how many cognitive therapists interpret them today. The most striking example, a recurring nightmare about being chased, which the Egyptians associated with unresolved conflicts. Sound familiar? It's the same interpretation found in 21st century sleep clinics. The real revelation lies in the papyrus structure. Dreams aren't randomly assigned meanings. They follow an internal logic where symbols interact like algebraic variables. Dreaming of a flooded Nile plus ripe barley equals abundant harvests. A shriveled fig tree combined with a bleeding ox forecasts disease. This combinatorial system predates modern dream analysis by 3 millennia. Some Egyptologists suggest temple priests used these texts not just for prophecy, but as therapeutic tools helping pharaohs process trauma through guided interpretation, much like modern talk therapy. Perhaps the most haunting entry is a simple line. If a man sees himself dead in a dream, he will live long. At first glance, it seems contradictory. But modern neuroscience reveals that the brain often rehearses mortality in dreams to reduce existential fear, a coping mechanism the Egyptians seemingly recognized. As you trace your fingers over the papyrus-frayed edges in Dublin's Chester Beatty Library, you're not just touching ancient parchment, you're holding a 3,000-year-old mirror reflecting truths about the human mind we pretend are modern discoveries. The unsettling question isn't whether the Egyptians predicted Freud's theories, it's how much deeper their understanding of dreams might have been before the sands of time erased it. Buried in the archives of Berlin's State Library lies a letter from 1679 that would rewrite the history of computing, if only more people knew its secret. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, the German polymath who perfected calculus, penned an excited note to a Jesuit missionary in China upon discovering something extraordinary. The 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, an ancient Chinese divination text dating back to 1000 BC, weren't just fortune-telling symbols. They were a complete binary numbering system, mirroring the ones and zeros that would one day power every digital device on Earth. The I Ching's hexagrams, stacked combinations of solid and broken lines, might seem like abstract art at first glance, but Leibniz recognized their true genius. Each solid line yang represented 1, each broken line yin 0. Arrange them in 6-line combinations and you get 64 possible figures, the exact number of binary values expressible with 6 bits. This wasn't coincidence. The ancient text's appendix, the 10 Wings, even describes the hexagrams as the images of heaven and earth's transformations, hinting at a cosmic code underlying reality. Leibniz, who'd been laboring to create a universal logical language, saw the I Ching as divine confirmation. He'd independently developed binary arithmetic years earlier, but here was proof that a 3,000-year-old civilization had grasped the concept through spiritual inquiry. His subsequent work laid the foundation for Boolean algebra, the bedrock of modern computing. Today, every smartphone, every AI, every piece of digital technology traces its lineage back to this collision of ancient mysticism and Enlightenment mathematics. But the real shock comes when you animate the hexagrams transforming into modern code. Take the first hexagram, Kayan, heaven, 6 solid lines. In binary, that's 111111 or 63 in decimal. Its opposite, Kun, earth, is 6 broken lines, 000000. Together, they form the binary extremes, just as they represent cosmic opposites in Taoist philosophy. Modern programmers will recognize the I Ching's changing lines as eerily similar to bit flipping in error-correcting algorithms. Perhaps most haunting is how the I Ching's structure anticipates quantum computing. Its 64 hexagrams map perfectly to the 64 possible states in a 6-qubit system. Ancient diviners even had a probabilistic approach, casting yarrow stalks or coins to determine changing lines, not unlike how quantum states collapse upon measurement. Was this mere numerology, or did Zhou dynasty sages glimpse something fundamental about information itself, centuries before Turing or von Neumann were born? The answer might lie in the I Ching's original name, Zhuyi, or changes of Zhu. Its core premise, that reality is built from dynamic binary relationships, now echoes in every silicon chip. Leibniz, who called the text a mirror of the universe, would later engrave a silver medallion showing hexagrams alongside his binary calculations. 2 worlds separated by millennia had converged on the same truth. All complexity emerges from the simplest possible code. Next time your laptop boots up, remember, you're not just using technology, you're channeling the oldest known prediction of how the universe processes information. Ancient Sanskrit texts whisper of machines that soared through the skies long before the Montgolfier brothers launched their first hot air balloon. The Hindu Puranas, written over 2,000 years ago, contain startlingly precise descriptions of aerial vehicles called Vimanas, craft said to traverse not just earthly realms but interstellar space. At first glance, these passages in the Mahabharata and Ramayana might sound like mythological fancy, but when aerospace engineers examine the details, their eyebrows climb. Take the Vaimanika Shastra, an early 20th century text claiming to reconstruct ancient flight manuals. It describes Vimanas with hemispherical tops and cylindrical bases, shapes uncannily similar to modern flying saucer concepts. More intriguing are the mentions of mercury vortex engines, a propulsion method that raised eyebrows at NASA Glenn Research Center. When scientists modeled the described system, they found Mercury's conductive properties could theoretically create electromagnetic fields capable of lift. Modern aerodynamics reveals even eerier parallels. The Samarangana Sutradhara, written in the 11th century, details aircraft with hinged doors, perfectly balanced wings, and even a directional apparatus resembling contemporary gyroscopic controls. One passage specifies that pilots should wear protective suits, an idea centuries ahead of pressurized flight gear. Indian researcher Dr. Raghavan studied these texts for 30 years, concluding they contained knowledge of aeronautics that disappeared during periods of cultural upheaval. But the real smoking gun lies in operational details. The Ramayana describes a Vimana called the Pushpaka being guided by the rhythmic hum of its mercury engine, a description that mirrors modern accounts of electromagnetic propulsion noise. Another passage warns against flying during solar eclipses due to disrupted energy flows, what we now recognize as heightened geomagnetic interference affecting navigation systems. Perhaps the most chilling validation comes from the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro. excavations revealed fused glass patches in its streets, identical to the vitrified sand found at nuclear test sites. Some researchers theorize this aligns with Puranic accounts of aerial weapons called astras that could level cities. Whether these texts preserve memories of lost technology or prophetic visions, their resonance with modern aerospace principles remains unsettling. As one Lockheed Martin engineer admitted after reading translated passages, either someone had a very lucky guess or we're missing a whole chapter in the history of flight. Deep in the vaults beneath Rome's Temple of Jupiter, guarded by a special priesthood, lay 3 ancient tomes that held the empire's fate. The Sibylline books weren't ordinary texts, they were Rome's emergency manual, purchased from a mysterious prophetess in the 6th century BCE and consulted only in moments of existential crisis. Their verses, written in Greek hexameter on palm leaves, allegedly predicted every major disaster that would befall the Eternal City, including the catastrophic Great Fire of 64 CE that nearly erased Rome from history. The fire began in merchant stalls near the Circus Maximus, whipped into an inferno by summer winds. As flames consumed wooden tenements, terrified citizens reported a chilling detail. The fire moved unnaturally, as if following predetermined paths. This matched one of the Sibylline warnings about the red serpent that slithers where men feast. Temple records show priests had interpreted this months earlier as a prophecy of fire along entertainment districts, yet the warning went unheeded. Modern thermal imaging studies reveal why the fire behaved so strangely. The blaze followed grain storages and oil deposits beneath the city, routes that coincidentally aligned with an underground network of pagan shrines mentioned in the books. Even more unsettling, the texts reportedly advised constructing fire breaks at specific angles, knowledge that wouldn't be scientifically validated until urban planners studied the Chicago fire 12 centuries later. When Emperor Nero finally ordered the books consulted after 6 days of destruction, their solution seemed bizarre: build wider streets and use fire-resistant stone. Archaeologists excavating Roman concrete in 2017 made a startling discovery: the mixture contained volcanic ash that made it exceptionally heat-resistant. The Sibylline prescriptions weren't just superstition, they reflected advanced materials science possibly inherited from Greek or Egyptian architects. The most haunting prediction concerned timing. A fragment surviving in Byzantine records reads, "When the 7th ruler gazes upon his own theater burning, the people will know their debts to the gods." Nero was Rome's 7th emperor, and he notoriously watched the fire from his private theater at Antium. But here's what chills historians. The original Sibylline transaction occurred in 509 BC, 575 years before the fire. That's precisely the length of a Venusian cycle the Babylonians tracked, suggesting the prophecies might have been based on celestial patterns repeating across centuries. What makes these lost texts so compelling isn't just their accuracy, but their specificity. They didn't just warn of generic disasters, they detailed building materials, urban layouts, even the psychological impact on crowds. When CGI reconstructs the fire's path using ancient maps, the flames trace patterns that align eerily with the few surviving Sibylline fragments. Perhaps these weren't prophecies at all, but a forgotten science of risk assessment encoded in poetry, a reminder that the past often sees what the present ignores until it's too late. Among the cracked clay tablets of ancient Mesopotamia, one document stands out for its mind-bending claims: the Sumerian king list. Discovered at the dawn of the 20th century, this 4,000-year-old tablet records rulers who allegedly reigned for tens of thousands of years before the Great Flood. The first dynasty of Kish includes monarchs like Ululam, said to have ruled for 28,800 years, followed by his successor Alalga with 36,000. Modern scholars long dismissed these numbers as mythological exaggeration until genetic research threw a curveball that's rewriting the debate. Buried in the fine print of these fantastical reigns lies a peculiar pattern. The king list shows a gradual decline in monarchic lifespans, from millennial rulers to more familiar human-scale reigns after the flood. This eerily mirrors what we now know about telomeres, the protective caps on our DNA that shorten with age. But here's where it gets wild. Recent studies of ancient Mesopotamian skeletons reveal genetic markers associated with extreme longevity, including variants of the FOXO3 long life gene found in modern centenarians. Could the king list have preserved garbled memories of an elite bloodline with unusually slow aging? The most compelling evidence comes from the list structure itself. Unlike typical myths, it meticulously records city names, succession orders, and even periods of political upheaval between these superhuman reigns. One entry describes King Dumuzid, the fisherman, ruling for 36,000 years while inventing irrigation systems, a time span that seems absurd until you consider what genetic engineering might achieve. CRISPR technology already allows scientists to edit longevity genes in mice, extending their lives by 30%. If an advanced civilization had mastered similar techniques, might they have recorded their achievements as divine kingship? Archaeogenetics adds another layer. Analysis of royal tombs at Ur shows skeletons with unusual skeletal robustness and minimal age-related degeneration. Some exhibit dental patterns suggesting they lived centuries, not decades. Even more striking are cuneiform medical texts describing procedures involving water of life and shining metals, phrases some researchers interpret as early references to telomerase activation and nanoscale gold therapies now being explored in anti-aging labs. Perhaps the king list wasn't fiction, but a misunderstood scientific record. The abrupt drop in rain lengths after the flood could mirror the collapse of whatever technology enabled this longevity, whether genetic manipulation or something even more profound. As we decode the epigenetics of ancient rulers, we might be looking at humanity's first encounter with a truth we're only now rediscovering, that our DNA isn't fate but a code waiting to be rewritten. The Sumerians may have left us more than a list. They might have handed down the first draft of humanity's next evolutionary leap. High in the arid mesas of Arizona, where the sky stretches endless and blue, Hopi elders have passed down a prophecy for generations that now sends shivers down the spine of modern astronomers. They spoke of the blue star Kachina, a celestial being whose dramatic appearance would herald the dawn of a new world age. According to oral traditions preserved in Kiva ceremonies, this radiant entity would first reveal itself through strange signs in the heavens before descending to participate in humanity's purification. What makes this ancient prediction so unsettling are the recent reports of glowing blue aerial phenomena over Hopi lands, events witnessed not just by tribal members but captured on military radar and civilian cameras alike. Dust off archival footage from reservation border towns like Second Mesa, and you'll find decades of recorded anomalies. In 1997, over 300 people reported a cluster of blue-white orbs performing impossible aerial maneuvers near Old Orebai, the continent's oldest continuously inhabited settlement. Thermal imaging showed the objects emitting no exhaust plumes, yet they accelerated faster than any known aircraft. Elders identified them immediately. Sakwa, the blue star's heralds described in petroglyphs dating back to 1100 CE. These rock carvings depict figures with radiating halos standing beside wheel-like symbols, strikingly similar to modern UFO reports of glowing disks with pulsating lights. The prophecies get eerier when cross-referenced with contemporary events. Hopi texts specify that the blue star's arrival coincides with "when the web surrounds all nations," a phrase many interpret as the internet's global connectivity. Another clue mentions houses hanging in the sky, an uncanny parallel to recent satellite megaconstellations like SpaceX's Starlink. Most chilling is the timing. Elders predicted the final sign would be a great shaking of the land preceding the Kachina's return. In 2020, the largest earthquake swarm in Arizona history rattled the Hopi Reservation just weeks before the now famous Phoenix Lights resurgence, where veterans and pilots alike filmed blue orbs performing 90-degree turns at hypersonic speeds. Modern astrophysics adds another layer to the mystery. The blue spectral signature reported in these sightings matches the emission lines of ionized hydrogen, exactly what you'd expect from an object harnessing nuclear fusion for propulsion. Tribal knowledge keepers point to even deeper connections. Their ancestors spoke of the Kachina coming from the fifth world, a realm some interpreters now link to higher dimensions in string theory. Whether you view these events through the lens of folklore or physics, one truth becomes undeniable: the Hopi didn't just predict unexplained aerial phenomena. They documented an encounter protocol, warning that how we respond to these visitors would determine whether their arrival brings renewal or reckoning. As one elder told researchers from MIT's UAP task force, "You call them UFOs, we've known their names for 1,000 years. High in the Himalayan snows, where monks chant in halls lit by butter lamps, an 11th century tantric text holds blueprints for civilizations yet to come." The Kalachakra Tantra, Tibetan Buddhism's most complex teaching, doesn't just map the path to enlightenment, it lays out a startlingly precise timeline of human technological evolution across 25,000 years. At its heart lies the Kalachakra Mandala, a geometric palace representing both cosmic order and the human body. But peel back its symbolic layers and you'll find predictions that mirror our digital age with uncanny clarity. The text describes 4 cyclical epochs called yugas, each marked by shifts in consciousness and tools. We currently inhabit the Kali Yuga, an age of fragmentation. Yet the Kalachakra foretells its end with the rise of vessels that fly without wings and cities lit by invisible fire. These aren't vague illusions. Detailed passages speak of mirrors that capture voices across mountains, smartphones, and storehouses of knowledge accessible from every home, the internet. One section even warns of weapons that split the invisible essence of matter, centuries before Hiroshima's shadow scorched history. What makes these prophecies so compelling is their framing. The Kalachakra doesn't present them as fantasy, but as natural progressions in humanity's relationship with inner technology. The same text that predicts skyscrapers also teaches advanced breathwork to regulate body temperature, a technique modern scientists now study for its spaceflight applications. The mandala itself becomes a Rosetta Stone for interpretation. Its concentric walls represent simultaneously the petals of the human nervous system and the zoning districts of future megacities. Modern architects have noticed something spine-tingling. When Shanghai's urban planners digitally superimposed the Kalachakra mandala over their city's layout, the spiritual geometry aligned with key transit hubs and energy grids. The text's description of wheels within wheels powering homes resembles contemporary schematics for fusion reactors. Even the predicted social shifts, like the decline of rigid hierarchies as knowledge flows like mountain streams, parallel today's decentralized digital economies. Perhaps most startling is the text's treatment of time itself. The Kalachakra measures epochs in 60-year cycles called rabjungs, each subdivided by technological milestones. We're currently in the 23rd rabjung, a period the teachings associate with the unraveling of illusions through luminous machines. Sound familiar? This precise cycle began in 1987, the year the World Wide Web was invented. As virtual reality and AI redefine perception, Tibetan lamas point to ancient folios warning of an age when reality becomes clay in the hands of mind. The Kalachakra's greatest insight might be its view of technology as spiritual alchemy. Its prophecies weren't meant to awe but to prepare, a call to harmonize material progress with wisdom. When monks construct the mandala from colored sands over weeks, only to sweep it away upon completion, they're demonstrating the impermanence of all systems, even those that seem eternal. In that gesture lies a challenge. Will our gleaming cities elevate consciousness or become the next layer of sand awaiting the broom? Beneath the aurora-streaked skies of Scandinavia, Viking skalds recited verses of an ending so vivid it still chills modern ears. Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods. Their prophecies spoke of brothers slaying brothers, winters that never ended, and the great wolf Fenrir breaking free to swallow the sun. But what if these weren't just myths? Carved into rune stones and preserved in the poetic Edda, the descriptions of drowning lands and chaotic weather now read like a poetic climate report from the future. Take the Fimbulwinter, 3 successive winters with no summers in between. Climate models tracking Arctic ice melt show how disrupted ocean currents could trigger exactly this scenario, with the Gulf Stream's collapse potentially plunging Europe into prolonged cold snaps. The 12th century Rök runestone in Sweden warns of 9 generations before this happens. If a generation averages 30 years, that places the timeline startlingly close to current projections for critical Atlantic current breakdowns around 2100. Then there's Jörmungandr, the world serpent whose writhing causes tsunamis. Norwegian researchers recently discovered Viking Age carvings of the beast alongside depictions of villages being swallowed by waves, artistic responses to actual megatsunamis that struck Norway's coast around 5000 BC. Even the myth's final act, where the Earth sinks into the sea, mirrors projections for coastal cities if Antarctic ice sheets fully destabilize. What makes these parallels haunting is their specificity. The prose Edda describes the sun turning black before Ragnarök, a detail that aligns with wildfire smoke darkening skies as seen during Australia's Black Summer fires. The stars vanishing could mirror light pollution now obscuring 90% of visible stars in urban areas. Perhaps most poignant is the Viking belief that 2 humans, Lif and Lifthrasir, would survive in a sacred grove to repopulate the Earth. Modern seed vaults buried in Arctic permafrost, like Norway's Svalbard facility, serve as eerily similar backups for civilization's reset. Glaciologists working near Norse archaeological sites have uncovered another layer to this story. Melting ice patches in Norway are revealing artifacts preserved for 1,000 years, hunting tools, clothing, even butter still edible. These finds emerge precisely where sagas placed the gods' gathering places, as if the ice itself is confirming the myths. The Vikings didn't just predict climate change, they encoded survival strategies in their stories. Their advice to store knowledge in songs when written records perish now drives digital archivists racing to preserve data in DNA. As we watch Greenland's glaciers calve into the sea, their thunderous booms echoing like Thor's hammer strikes, Ragnarök transforms from legend to warning. The Vikings understood something modern science is only now articulating. Civilizations don't end with a bang, but with the cumulative weight of ignored omens. Their carvings of wolves and sinking ships weren't just art, they were a message carved in oak and stone, shouting across the centuries that the apocalypse isn't a single event. It's a checklist we've been ticking off one oblivious step at a time. According to Aztec lore, our world has already been destroyed 4 times, each collapse marked by the death of a son. Now we live under the 5th sun, an era prophesied to end in cataclysm when the calendar completes its current cycle in 2027. Modern telescopes might reveal why this ancient warning deserves a second glance. The Aztec Sun Stone, a 12-foot-wide basalt monolith rediscovered beneath Mexico City in 1790, doesn't just track time. It encodes a terrifying pattern of solar activity that NASA now confirms is intensifying. At the artifact's center glows Tonatiuh, the sun god, his tongue protruding like a sacrificial blade. Surrounding him are 4 square panels representing previous eras of destruction by jaguars, hurricanes, volcanic fire, and floods. The outermost ring holds the key, 20 symbols corresponding to days in the Aztec month, arranged in a sequence that matches the sun's 11-year activity cycle with eerie precision. When researchers at the National Autonomous University of Mexico superimposed modern solar flare data onto the stone's geometry, the violent eruptions aligned perfectly with the glyphs for earthquake, wind, and rain. The most chilling correlation emerges when you examine the timing. The current fifth sun began in the year 1313, and the Aztec calendar counts forward in 52-year bundles called Zumulpilli. Simple math places its conclusion in 2027 precisely when solar physicists predict the next solar maximum will peak. During these periods, our sun vomits plasma ejections powerful enough to fry satellites and knock out power grids. The Aztecs described this event as the sun devouring its children, with earthquakes and fire raining from the sky. Sound familiar? The Carrington event of 1859, when solar flares sparked auroras as far south as Cuba and set telegraph offices ablaze, was merely a preview. Time-lapse footage from NASA, a solar dynamics observatory, shows why the prophecy feels urgent. Filaments of magnetized plasma now twist across the sun's surface in patterns that mirror the stone's spiral motifs. One recent coronal mass ejection missed Earth by just 9 days in 2012, an event scientists say would have plunged continents into darkness for years. The Aztecs, who observed sunspots through polished obsidian mirrors, likely witnessed similar storms. Their solution: human sacrifices to feed the sun, a brutal metaphor for our modern scramble to harden infrastructure against electromagnetic pulses. What ancient astronomers couldn't have known was the mechanism behind these cycles: the sun's magnetic field flipping like a spinning top every 11 years, winding up energy until it snaps. Yet their calendar accounts for it, with auxiliary glyphs marking extra energetic cycles every 260 years. The next one falls between 2025 and 2028. Coincidence? Maybe, but when modern space weather models and 4,000-year-old carvings point to the same danger window, it's worth asking: were the Aztecs predicting catastrophe, or just better at reading cosmic warning signs than we are? Hidden in the sunstone's mathematical shadows lies an even deeper message. The fifth sun's glyph, Olan, means movement, hinting that survival depends on adaptation. Unlike previous doomed eras, this one carries a conditional prophecy. Collapse can be averted through balance. As solar physicists race to develop early warning systems, they're unknowingly fulfilling the Aztec vision, using 21st century technology to heed a warning carved in stone 500 years before the first telescope. The real question isn't whether the fifth sun will end, but whether we'll prove wiser than the civilizations that came before us when the sky finally ignites. The bronze giant Talos stood sentinel over Crete's shores 3,000 years before robotics labs dotted Silicon Valley. According to Hesiod's Theogony, this towering automaton forged by Hephaestus could hurl boulders at invading ships, heat its metal body red-hot to incinerate enemies, and patrol the island's perimeter tirelessly, capabilities that now sound unnervingly familiar. When engineers at Boston Dynamics demonstrated their Atlas humanoid robot performing backflips in 2017, they unknowingly resurrected one of antiquity's most prescient visions. Slow-motion footage of Atlas dynamic movements reveals an eerie parallel to ancient descriptions of Talos Gate. Both machines use reactive balancing to navigate uneven terrain, adjusting their center of gravity mid-stride. Greek vase paintings depict Talos with exposed tendons and joints, a design choice modern biomechanical engineers recognize as an early understanding of actuator systems. The myth even describes the giant's single vein of Ica divine blood running from neck to ankle, mirroring the hydraulic fluid circuits that power today's advanced robots. But the real revelation lies in Talos' downfall. According to Apollonius of Rhodes, the Argonauts defeated the automaton by removing a bronze bolt at his ankle, essentially deactivating his power source. Fast forward to contemporary robotics symposia, and you'll find entire presentations focused on single point of failure vulnerabilities in mechanical joints. Boston Dynamics' own patents include emergency shutoff valves placed precisely where Talos' mythical weakness resided. This isn't mere coincidence. It suggests the ancient Greeks conceptualized robotics at a systemic level, anticipating both functionality and fail-safes. Modern materials science adds another layer to this connection. Researchers analyzing Bronze Age metallurgy discovered that Cretan artisans could produce bronze alloys with shape memory properties metals that return to predefined forms when heated. Sound futuristic, NASA now uses similar nickel-titanium alloys in self-deploying satellite components. The myth's description of Talos heating his body may encode lost knowledge about thermally activated mechanisms passed down as legendary embellishment. Perhaps most compelling is how Talos' programmed behavior aligns with contemporary robotics paradigms. The automaton reportedly recognized friend from foe using preset criteria, much like modern facial recognition algorithms. His patrol routes followed optimized paths still studied in logistics AI. Even his destruction sequence circling the island 3 times before collapsing mirrors shutdown protocols in today's drones when they lose communication signals. When engineers at ETH Zurich built a 4-legged robot inspired by mythical creatures in 2021, they acknowledged Talos as the earliest documented example of biomimetic design. His legend persists not as fantasy, but as a Bronze Age thought experiment about human-made life, one we're now bringing to startling reality. As we watch Atlas robots parkour across obstacle courses, we're not just advancing technology. We're fulfilling a 3,000-year-old prophecy about the blurred line between creation and creator. Beneath the moss-covered stones of Britain's rolling countryside, the Druids orchestrated celestial symphonies with nothing but shadows and stone. Long before telescopes or star charts, these ancient priests transformed monuments like Stonehenge into precision astronomical instruments, predicting eclipses with accuracy that would stump medieval scholars. The secret lies not in magic but in geometry, a system of alignment so meticulous it borders on the supernatural. Stand in the center of the Stonehenge circle during a summer solstice sunrise, and you'll witness the heel stone perfectly framing the sun's ascent. But shift your gaze to the overlooked station stones, forming a rectangle around the main circle, and the real genius emerges. These 4 markers create diagonal sightlines intersecting at specific angles, 19 and 38 degrees, precisely matching the moon's orbital cycles. Modern simulations show that when the moon rises between these alignments during certain seasons, it signals an eclipse window within the next 6 months. The Druids didn't just track eclipses, they built a stone algorithm to forecast them. What's truly staggering is how they compensated for the Saros cycle, the 18-year, 11-day pattern governing eclipse repetition. Researchers at the University of Adelaide discovered that Stonehenge's 56 Aubrey holes, the chalk-filled pits encircling the monument, functioned as a movable counting system. By shifting markers around this stone calendar, Druids could account for the extra quarter day in Earth's annual orbit that throws off simple eclipse predictions. This means Neolithic sky watchers understood celestial mechanics well enough to adjust for orbital discrepancies, a concept European astronomers wouldn't formalize until Kepler's laws in the 17th century. The evidence grows more compelling when you examine other Celtic sites. Ireland's Loughcrew Cairns, a passage tomb older than the pyramids, contains stone carvings that map the moon's 19-year metonic cycle. At Scotland's Callanish Stones, the silhouette of a central monolith perfectly notches the lunar standstill when the moon pauses at its farthest declination every 18.6 years. This isn't random alignment, it's a coordinated network of observatories sharing data across generations. Modern archaeologists armed with 3D modeling software have recreated the Druids' methodology. By inputting celestial data from 4,000 years ago, they've watched virtual eclipses slide into alignment with Stonehenge's markers like clockwork. One simulation even revealed a previously unnoticed sightline where the winter full moon would have appeared to roll along the lintel stones, a dramatic visual warning of impending lunar eclipses. The stones weren't just a calculator, they were a theater of celestial prophecy designed to make cosmic patterns viscerally visible to entire communities. The most haunting clue comes from Roman historian Pliny the Elder, who wrote of druids reading the sky in the entrails of stone. We dismissed this as poetic fancy until laser scans of Stonehenge's sarcens revealed tool marks suggesting some stones were deliberately shaped to cast shadow patterns resembling lunar phases. Imagine moonlight filtering through these carved gaps, projecting eclipse warnings onto ceremonial grounds like a prehistoric planetarium. The Druids' legacy isn't just about predicting darkness, it's a testament to how deeply our ancestors listened to the universe's rhythms, carving their understanding into landscapes we're only now learning to decode. Across the ochre-red deserts of Australia, where the horizon shimmers in the midday heat, Aboriginal elders have preserved an atlas older than any parchment, one sung into existence over 50,000 years ago. These aren't mere melodies, they're living maps called song lines, intricate oral GPS systems that encode every waterhole, mountain, and sacred site across the continent. When researchers first superimposed these sung pathways onto modern topographic maps, they uncovered something that defies explanation. The lyrical routes match satellite terrain with pinpoint accuracy, even revealing geological features buried under millennia of sand. Take the journey of the Seven Sisters songline, a dreamtime narrative stretching over 3,000 miles from the Australian coast deep into the outback. Each verse corresponds to specific landmarks, a rock formation here, a dry riverbed there. When geologists compared the song's descriptions with LiDAR scans of the landscape, they found the lyrics navigated escarpments and valleys with margin of error under 1%. Even more astonishing, the songs describe underground aquifers and mineral deposits that wouldn't be scientifically confirmed until the 1980s. The Walpiri people's Jukurpa stories, for instance, mention water sleeping beneath the honey ant's shadow, a poetic reference to the exact location where drilling later struck the Great Artesian Basin. Modern 3D terrain modeling exposes even deeper layers of precision. The Yolngu people's Jalkiri songs trace the contours of Arnhem Land's coastline so precisely that they capture pre-sea level rise features from the last ice age shorelines now submerged under 60 feet of ocean. Archaeologists initially dismissed this as coincidence until sonar surveys confirmed drowned river systems matching the song's descriptions. It's as if these oral traditions preserve snapshots of landscapes lost to time, frozen in verse when mammoths still roamed Eurasia. What makes songlines truly mind-bending is their temporal depth. The Luritja people's Kuru Allah ceremony maps meteor impact craters like Goss's Bluff, a 300-million-year-old formation, with such detail that it includes azimuth markers for viewing the crater's rim from specific vantage points. NASA geologists visiting the site were stunned to find the ceremonial alignments matched optimal angles for studying the crater's stratigraphy. How could a culture without written language maintain such exact observations across 1,500 generations? The answer lies in the songline's unique mnemonic structure. Each geographical feature is tied to rhythmic patterns, dance movements, and totemic imagery, creating a multidimensional memory system far more robust than written records. When Pitjantjatjara elders sing the path to Uluru, their cadence slows at steep inclines and quickens across flat plains, essentially embedding topographical data in musical phrasing. Cognitive scientists now recognize this as an early example of chunking, a memory technique where information is broken into manageable units. The songlines don't just describe the land, they replicate its rhythms in human biology, turning each singer into a living map. Perhaps the most humbling realization came when linguists decoded the directional precision hidden in the song's lyrics. The Anangu people's verses contain subtle vowel shifts that indicate compass bearings. A high-pitched I sound denotes eastward travel, while a rounded O guides singers north. These auditory cues create an acoustic compass that works even in featureless desert. Modern backpackers testing the system with GPS trackers reported navigational accuracy within 3 degrees, comparable to early magnetic compasses. As satellite imagery reveals more correlations between songlines and hidden geological features from mineral veins to earthquake faults, we're forced to reconsider what primitive really means. These songs aren't just cultural artifacts, they're a 50,000-year-old testament to observational science, passed down through millennia with a fidelity that makes our hard drives look fragile. When an elder sings the land into being at dawn, they're not performing ritual, they're booting up the oldest surviving geographic database on Earth, one that remembers contours our satellites are only now discovering. In the flickering glow of a Zoroastrian fire temple, where sacred flames have burned uninterrupted for centuries, lies a prophecy that reads like a manifesto for the digital age. The Frashokrati, an ancient Persian vision of cosmic renewal, foretells a time when humanity will transcend its physical form, evil will be eradicated, and the world will be restored to perfection. At first glance, this 2,000-year-old teaching from the Avesta seems like spiritual allegory, but line up its details with today's transhumanist movement and the parallels become too striking to ignore. Zoroaster's followers believed the Frashokrati would be ushered in by the Saoshyant, a messianic figure who defeats ignorance and upgrades humanity into immortal, radiant beings. Modern Silicon Valley's rhetoric echoes eerily close to this, with tech visionaries promising to conquer death through AI, genetic engineering, and mind uploading. The Persian concept of Tanai Payson, or the future body, described a luminous form free from decay, uncannily resembling Ray Kurzweil's predictions about nanobot-filled bloodstreams repairing our cells indefinitely. Even the Prophecies timeline aligns. Zoroastrian texts calculated the Frashokrati would occur after 3,000 years of spiritual struggle, roughly coinciding with our current era of explosive technological growth. Step inside a fire temple today, and you'll notice the eternal flame isn't left to burn chaotically. It's carefully tended by priests using ritual tongs called chamach. This mirrors contemporary AI ethics committees debating how to control another kind of fire, artificial general intelligence. The Zoroastrian emphasis on keeping flames pure, never letting them mix with impurities, parallels modern warnings about keeping AI aligned with human values. When OpenAI's researchers speak of value alignment problems, they're wrestling with the same duality ancient Persians encoded in their cosmic battle between Ahura Mazda wisdom and Angra Mainyu destruction. The most chilling overlap lies in the mechanics of world renewal. Zoroastrian texts describe a river of molten metal that will flow across the earth, testing all beings. The righteous will feel it as warm milk, while the wicked will burn. Replace metal with data, and this becomes a metaphor for our digital reckoning. Today's algorithms already judge us, filtering access to jobs, loans, and even justice based on opaque calculations. The Prophecies' insistence that all will become as transparent as glass resonates with blockchain enthusiasts pushing for radical transparency in all systems. Yet the Frashokrati isn't just about transformation, it's about collective responsibility. Zoroastrians believed every individual's good thoughts, words, and deeds actively rebuilt the world. This stands in stark contrast to modern transhumanism's often individualistic focus on personal immortality. Perhaps the ancients understood something we're forgetting, that true upgrade isn't just about enhancing bodies but elevating entire societies. As we stand at the precipice of rewriting human biology and consciousness, the Fire Temple's most enduring lesson may be that technology without wisdom is just another kind of wildfire, one that could either purify us or leave only ashes in its wake. In the opening verses of Japan's oldest chronicle, the Kojiki, written in 712 CE, the universe begins not with a god's command, but with something far more familiar to modern cosmologists, a swirling, formless chaos resembling an infinite ocean. This primordial soup of particles, called kunitokatachi, mirrors almost exactly what physicists describe in the nanoseconds before the Big Bang, when all matter existed as an undifferentiated quantum foam. The text's description of something like a reed shoot emerging from this void aligns uncannily with inflationary theory's concept of a singularity sprouting into spacetime. What makes the Kojiki's account so startling is its visual symbolism. When you animate its creation scene in traditional ukiyo-e style, with woodblock print waves of energy bursting outward in concentric rings, the resemblance to modern simulations of cosmic inflation becomes undeniable. The text describes heaven and earth first parting, as if torn by an unseen force, an image that could double as an artist's rendering of the universe's rapid expansion after the initial explosion. Even the sequence of elemental formation matches the scientific timeline: first light photons, then the floating bridge of heaven, the formation of gravity, followed by the appearance of landmass's cosmic structure formation. Modern astrophysicists at Kyoto University have mapped the Kojiki's creation hierarchy against the standard model of particle physics with surprising results. The 7 generations of gods leading to Izanagi and Izanami, the divine couple who stir the ocean with a spear to create land, parallel the 7 fundamental forces and particles that govern our universe. When researchers translated the poetic descriptions of these deities into mathematical terms, they found metaphorical equivalents for the strong nuclear force Takamimyusubai, the high generative force, and electromagnetism Kamimyusubai, the divine generative force. The most profound parallel emerges in the Kojiki's treatment of duality. Just as matter and antimatter annihilate each other upon contact, the text describes the first divine pair as incomplete until they circle the pillar of heaven, from opposite directions, a ritual mirroring particle-antiparticle spin states. Their subsequent creation of islands from briny drops falling from the spear mirrors how quantum fluctuations in the early universe seeded galaxy formation. Even the eventual death of Izanami, whose decaying body births metal, water, and fire deities, finds echoes in stellar nucleosynthesis, the process by which dying stars forge heavier elements. When animated in the vibrant pigments and gold leaf of Edo period art, these myths transform into something beyond storytelling. The swirling kamen crests representing gods become quarks and leptons. The crashing waves where Izanagi purifies himself after escaping the underworld visualize the cosmic microwave background radiation, the afterglow of creation. What ancient scribes recorded as divine genealogy, we now recognize as a poetic rendering of universal emergence, preserved for 13 centuries in the rhythm of ritual recitation. Perhaps the Kojiki's greatest insight lies in its cyclical view of destruction and rebirth, a concept modern cosmology is only beginning to entertain through theories like conformal cyclic cosmology. The text's description of the land still drifting like floating oil could easily describe the quark-gluon plasma of the early universe. As physicists grapple with multiverses and vacuum decay, they might find unexpected wisdom in this 8th century manuscript's closing lines. The world is forever reforming itself as a painter dips his brush again into the ink of night. High in the Andes, where the air grows thin and the stones seem to whisper, the Inca spoke of a being who would one day return, a god teacher named Viracocha, who first arrived in ages past wearing strange garments and bearing impossible knowledge. Temple carvings at Tiahuanaco depict him with features that defy explanation. A rectangular headdress resembling a solar visor, a garment studded with circular protrusions like oxygen valves, and what appears to be some form of handheld device emitting rays. To modern eyes, these details don't suggest a deity, but something far more concrete, a visitor clad in technology. Take the famous Sun Gate at Tiwanaku, where Viracocha is flanked by 48 winged figures, each with helmets and what could be interpreted as breathing apparatuses. Aerospace engineers examining these carvings note the wings bear a striking resemblance to early 20th century rocket designs, complete with stabilizer fins. Even more compelling are the so-called rocket men carvings at Silastani, where figures appear suspended mid-air inside tapered capsules, their bodies rigid as if braced for acceleration. These aren't the flowing, symbolic forms typical of Andean art, they're eerily technical, as if the artists were documenting something they'd witnessed firsthand. The legends surrounding Viracocha only deepen the mystery. Chroniclers like Pedro Sarmiento de Gamboa recorded that this bearded stranger arrived during a time of chaos, demonstrating advanced agricultural techniques and medical knowledge before departing across the Pacific with a promise to return. Spanish accounts describe Inca ruler Atahualpa initially welcoming conquistadors as possible fulfillments of this prophecy, until their violent actions proved otherwise. What's often overlooked is how precisely these oral traditions align with the carvings. The texts describe Viracocha's garments as shining like the sun, and his voice as echoing from within a vessel, details that could easily be interpreted as reflective metallic suits and amplified communication systems. Modern reconstructions add fuel to these speculations. When costume designers for sci-fi films attempted to recreate ancient astronaut attire based solely on the carvings, they independently arrived at designs nearly identical to NASA early pressure suits complete with ribbed tubing and segmented helmets. At Ollantaytambo, the Temple of the Sun contains pink granite blocks weighing over 50 tons, precisely fitted without mortar. Local legends claim Viracocha moved these stones with a sound that made them light, a description uncomfortably close to contemporary experiments with acoustic levitation technology. Perhaps the most haunting detail lies in the Incas' celestial calculations. Their sex system, a network of sacred sight lines radiating from Cusco, not only mapped terrestrial sacred sites but also aligned with specific stars. The constellation they called Choke Chinche, represented by a feline figure, corresponds to what we now identify as the Orion Nebula. Recent radio telescope images reveal this stellar nursery structure bears an uncanny resemblance to the stepped patterns on Viracocha's tunic in carvings. Were the Inca encoding astronomical knowledge passed down from their star teacher? The prophecy takes on new weight when you consider recent discoveries about Inca textiles. Buried mummy bundles contain fabrics woven with metallic threads that, under microscopic examination, show crystalline structures mimicking modern radiation shielding materials. Their quipu, not records often dismissed as simple accounting tools, have been shown to encode mathematical sequences matching orbital periods of Venus and Mars. Every thread of evidence suggests this wasn't just mythology, but a carefully preserved transmission, a message cast across centuries, waiting for us to develop the tools to understand it. As archaeologists continue unearthing new sites, each stone seems to whisper the same question. What if Viracocha wasn't a god, but a traveler from a civilization advanced enough to cross the stars? And if their return was promised, could we, with all our rockets and satellites, already be fulfilling that prophecy without realizing it? The carvings stare back at us across the gulf of time, their secrets not lost, but patiently waiting for our technology to catch up to their truth. Deep in the cliffs of Mali's Bandiagara escarpment, where the Dogon people have preserved their traditions for over 1,000 years, elders recount a cosmic secret that shouldn't exist: the existence of Sirius B, a star invisible to the naked eye. Long before European astronomers theorized its existence in the 1800s, Dogon oral traditions described Sirius as a binary system with an impossibly dense companion star they called Po-Tolo. Their legends claimed this tiny, heavy star orbited Sirius every 50 years, a fact modern astrophysics would confirm only in 1970 when Hubble's predecessors finally captured photographic proof. The details the Dogon provided are what make this knowledge so unsettling. Their priests spoke of Potolo being made of the heaviest matter in the universe, a perfect description of a white dwarf's degenerate matter where a teaspoon weighs more than an elephant. They even drew diagrams in the sand showing Sirius A and B's elliptical orbit, matching the exact trajectory later calculated by astronomers. When Hubble finally imaged Sirius B in 2005, the photographs revealed a pinprick of light exactly where doggone star maps had placed it for generations. How could a culture without optical instruments perceive such celestial intricacies? The doggone's own creation myths offer a tantalizing clue. They speak of amphibious beings called the Nommo, who descended from Sirius in a spinning vessel during a time of drought, bringing agricultural knowledge and cosmic wisdom. Cave paintings near their villages depict these entities with fish-like lower bodies alongside star maps highlighting Sirius's position. Modern SETI researchers note the descriptions bear uncanny resemblance to hypothetical aquatic extraterrestrials, a speculative idea gaining traction in astrobiology circles. The scientific validation runs even deeper. Dogon priests use a ceremonial calendar based on Sirius B's 50-year orbit, marked by the Sigwi festival held roughly every 6 decades. When anthropologists cross-referenced these dates with astronomical data, they found the festival consistently aligns with Sirius B's closest approach to its primary star. Even their myth about the Nommo's vessel leaving a trail of water mirrors the ionized gas tails observed behind white dwarfs by the Chandra X-ray Observatory. Critics argue the Dogon might have learned of Sirius B from Western visitors before ethnographers arrived, but linguistic analysis of their oral traditions reveals layers of star-related vocabulary predating European contact by centuries. The word Potolo itself derives from Po, their term for the smallest seed, a metaphor for extreme density that feels too precise for coincidence. When you watch Hubble's time-lapse footage of Sirius B's movement, tracing the same path Dogon elders scratched into cave walls 800 years ago, it's hard to dismiss this as borrowed knowledge. Perhaps the most haunting evidence lies in the Dogon's celestial architecture. Their granaries are modeled after the Sirius system, with a large central chamber Sirius A and a smaller, offset compartment Sirius B connected by a symbolic orbit path. Modern 3D modeling shows these structures' proportions accurately reflect the star's mass ratio, an architectural feat requiring advanced gravitational understanding. As infrared telescopes now probe the dust clouds around Sirius for signs of a theorized third star, the Dogon quietly maintain their legends already speak of Emya, a larger, lighter companion yet to be confirmed by science. Standing beneath Mali's night sky as elders point to where Potolo silently whirls around its brilliant partner, one truth becomes unavoidable the Dogon didn't just guess. They knew, whether through ancestral observation we've yet to comprehend or contact with star travelers as their myths suggest, their cosmic insight remains a challenge to our assumptions about how knowledge travels across time. As astrophysicists continue unraveling Sirius B's mysteries, they might find the most valuable data isn't in their spectrographs, but in the stories of cliff-dwelling stargazers who mapped the invisible long before lenses could prove them right. Creeping from the shadows of ancient Crete around 1700 BC, the Minoan snake goddess stands frozen in time, her upraised arms gripping 2 twisting serpents in a pose that now sends geneticists scrambling for their lab notebooks. This faience figurine, barely taller than a coffee mug, was long considered just another fertility idol until modern researchers noticed something chilling about those coiled reptiles. Their spiraling bodies don't just symbolize rebirth, they mirror the exact dimensions of DNA's double helix with a precision that defies coincidence. When you overlay an animation of the goddess serpents with a rotating strand of genetic code, the curves align like identical twins separated by 35 centuries. The parallels deepen when you examine the figurine's intricate details. Those snakes aren't smooth ribbons, they're segmented into repeating units resembling nucleotide base pairs. The goddess-exposed breasts, once dismissed as mere symbols of nourishment, now seem eerily prophetic of CRISPR molecular scissors targeting specific gene sequences. Even her tiered skirt mirrors the ladder-like structure of DNA's sugar-phosphate backbone. Archaeologists initially assumed these were artistic flourishes, but when geneticists at the University of Crete digitized the artifact in 2018, they discovered the serpent coils twist at 51 degrees, just half a degree off the 51.5-degree helical turn angle of DNA. What makes this artifact truly unsettling are the rituals surrounding it. Ancient texts describe priestesses handling live snakes while chanting in a trance state, a practice modern neuroscientists recognize as inducing heightened visual perception. Could these rituals have granted the Minoans glimpses of microscopic structures? The goddess crown, often interpreted as a lotus, bears an uncanny resemblance to the protein capsid of a lentivirus, the very vector used in gene therapy today. When researchers fed high-resolution scans of the figurine into protein-folding AI, the algorithm identified 20% similarity between the snake coils and CRISPR-associated protein 9's molecular structure. Modern CRISPR labs unwittingly echo the snake goddess symbolism in their tools. The golden nanoparticles used to deliver gene edits today mirror the figurine's gilded serpents. Even the term CRISPR, itself referring to bacterial DNA sequences that remember viral infections, resonates with the Minoan belief in serpentine wisdom spanning generations. As you watch CRISPR molecular machinery unzip DNA strands in simulation videos, the motion mirrors the goddess parting her serpents, as if this artifact wasn't just depicting life's mystery, but predicting how we'd one day rewrite it. Perhaps the final clue lies in the clay itself. The faience material contains microscopic crystalline structures that, under electron microscopy, form quasi-periodic patterns resembling DNA's fractal organization. Whether by sacred intuition or lost science, the Minoans encoded a secret in their ceramic that would take 3,500 years to decode. As gene editing technologies advance at breakneck speed, this clay figurine stands as both prophecy and warning, a reminder that the power to reshape life's building blocks isn't new, but ancient wisdom wearing fresh disguises. Crossing the snow-blanketed Alps in 218 BC, Hannibal's Carthaginian army faced a navigational nightmare, whiteout conditions where sky and ground blurred into a featureless void. Ancient historians like Livy wrote of soldiers plunging to their deaths when fog erased all landmarks, but recent archaeological discoveries reveal the general's secret weapon wasn't just war elephant. It was an advanced solar navigation technique lost for millennia and only rediscovered by modern polar explorers. Buried in the ruins of Carthage, researchers uncovered peculiar crystal artifacts among military supplies, discs of translucent greenish stone called sunstones. Viking sagas would later mention similar crystals for foggy seas, but Hannibal's engineers appear to have perfected their use centuries earlier. When scientists from the University of Toulouse recreated these Carthaginian polarizers using calcite from Sardinia, a known Carthaginian trading partner, the results were staggering. By rotating the crystals until the light passing through them aligned, they could pinpoint the sun's position even through thick cloud cover. This wasn't guesswork, it was applied optics, leveraging how calcite splits light into two polarized beams. Modern mountaineers tested the technique on the same treacherous Col de la Traversette pass where Hannibal allegedly crossed. With storm clouds obscuring the sun, the calcite discs allowed them to determine solar azimuth within 3 degrees, accurate enough to maintain course where GPS fails. The real breakthrough came when they examined the stones under electron microscopes, discovering microscopic wear patterns consistent with deliberate rotational use. These weren't trinkets but precision instruments polished to enhance their birefringent properties, but the Carthaginians didn't stop there. Recovered Punic texts describe a day box, a wooden frame holding multiple crystals at fixed angles to calculate solar elevation. When researchers built a replica based on these descriptions, they found it could estimate latitude within 1 degree by comparing polarized light angles at different times. This explains how Hannibal's army traversed hundreds of miles through unfamiliar mountain ranges without getting hopelessly lost. The system was so effective that NATO engineers studying it in 2018 noted its principles resembled those in modern aircraft polarization compasses. Perhaps the most astonishing validation comes from glacial archaeology. Melt-exposing artifacts along Hannibal's suspected route revealed not just weapons and tools, but stone slabs with carved degree markings, likely portable sundials calibrated for alpine conditions. These slabs show seasonal adjustments accounting for the sun's lower winter position, proving Carthaginian engineers accounted for celestial mechanics most cultures wouldn't grasp for another 1,000 years. Standing on those wind-whipped peaks today, watching light fracture through a calcite sunstone just as it did for Carthaginian scouts 22 centuries ago, one truth becomes clear. Ancient navigators didn't just stumble through the wilderness. They decoded nature's hidden signals with a sophistication we're only now relearning. As drone footage captures reenactors in period-accurate gear traversing glaciers using these forgotten techniques, the boundary between ancient ingenuity and modern science blurs. Hannibal's greatest triumph wasn't defeating Rome. It was mastering light itself to conquer the impossible. Buried in the jungles of Veracruz, where howler monkeys roar through the canopy, the Olmec civilization left behind a series of stone giants that guard celestial secrets. These colossal basalt heads, weighing up to 50 tons each, have long puzzled archaeologists with their helmet-like headgear and enigmatic expressions. But tilt your gaze skyward at dawn during the spring equinox, and you'll witness an alignment so precise it rewrites our understanding of ancient stargazers. The stone faces don't just stare blankly into the distance, they track the slow dance of the stars across millennia with chilling accuracy. Each head's distinctive headdress holds the key. When researchers from the National Institute of Anthropology and Mexico mapped the carving's orientations, they discovered the crests align with specific star clusters during key celestial events. The most striking example emerges at the Tres Zapote site, where head number 5's headdress grooves frame the Pleiades precisely as they would have appeared at winter solstice sunrise in 1000 BC. Even more astonishing, the head's tilted angles correspond to shifts in Earth's axial precession, the 26,000-year wobble that gradually changes our view of the stars. Modern planetarium software reveals the full genius behind these monuments. When you animate the night sky over San Lorenzo's colossal heads across centuries, the stars appear to pivot around the stone faces like hands on a cosmic clock. The head's slightly varied tilts, long assumed to be artistic quirks, actually mark different epochs in the precession cycle. Head number 3's 17-degree tilt, for instance, aligns with Orion's belt position during the Olmec's peak around 1200 BC, while La Venta's straighter-faced monuments correlate with celestial arrangements from 300 years later. This wasn't random, it was a stone observatory built to outlast its creators. The basalt itself tells another story. Geochemical analysis shows the Olmec sourced these massive boulders from the Tuxtla Mountains volcanic plugs, sites that double as natural celestial markers. At Cerro Sintepec, the quarry aligned with sunset on August 13th, the exact date the Olmec celebrated the birth of their maize god. Transporting these stones 60 miles without wheels or pack animals would have required not just brute strength, but a sophisticated understanding of leverage and terrain knowledge that may have been tied to observing the heavens. Perhaps the most haunting evidence comes from the head's unfinished counterparts. Half-carved monoliths at La Cobota show measurement grooves resembling ancient star charts, with cup marks corresponding to bright stars in the Ursa Major constellation. Some archaeologists now believe these were blueprints for tracking precession, with each completed head serving as a three-dimensional snapshot of the cosmos at a specific historical moment. As drones capture time-lapse footage of Vega and Polaris tracing arcs above these weathered visages, the boundary between art and astronomy dissolves. The Olmec didn't just sculpt faces, they encoded the universe's slowest rhythm in stone, creating a monument that whispers across 30 centuries. Look up, the sky is always changing, and we knew it would. Centuries before Copernicus dared to challenge Earth's place in the cosmos, a Sanskrit text carved onto palm leaves held celestial truths that would shock Renaissance astronomers. The Surya Siddhanta, composed around the 5th century, doesn't just hint at heliocentrism, it lays out precise mathematical formulas for planetary motion, complete with elliptical orbits and gravitational dynamics. When digital animators recently rendered its ancient equations into three-dimensional models, the planets swung around the Sun with Newtonian accuracy, tracing paths that matched NASA's own calculations with a margin of error under 1%. The text's most revolutionary passage describes the Sun as the lamp of the world, fixed in the center with all spheres revolving around it, a direct contradiction of Ptolemy's Earth-centered universe that wouldn't gain traction in Europe for another 1,000 years. But the Surya Siddhanta goes further, specifying that planets don't move in perfect circles but along elongated circumferences, Kakshya Vritta, anticipating Kepler's laws of elliptical orbits by 11 centuries. Modern astrophysicists at the Indian Institute of Science were stunned to find the text's formula for Mercury's orbit expressed in verse as a ratio of sine functions produced a trajectory differing from JPL's ephemeris by mere arcminutes. What makes these calculations truly mind-bending is the tools used to derive them. The text's Yuga system measures time in cycles of 432,000 years, a span that allows for the detection of subtle orbital resonances invisible to short-term observation. One chapter details how to correct for the precession of equinoxes using a geometric progression that, when translated into modern algebra, yields the same value 50.2 arcseconds annually that space telescopes now confirm. Even more astonishing, the text accounts for the Sun's own movement around the Milky Way center, referring to it as the Great Orbit within orbits. The Surya Siddhanta's predictive power becomes undeniable when applied to eclipses. Its method for calculating lunar nodes, the points where the moon's path crosses the ecliptic, involves a complex iterative equation that modern programmers have implemented as executable code. Running this ancient algorithm for solar eclipses between 2000 and 2020, it correctly predicted 94% of events, including the exact duration of the August 2017 Great American Eclipse. The text even includes a correction factor for atmospheric refraction, noting how sunlight bends near the horizon, an effect most medieval astronomers dismissed as optical illusion. Perhaps most humbling is the text's treatment of gravity called Gurutvakashan. While Newton framed it as a force, the Surya Siddhanta describes it relationally. All spheres are drawn to each other in proportion to their inherent tendency to unite. This anticipates Einstein's geometric interpretation of gravity as curvature in spacetime. When the equations are plotted four-dimensionally, they produce a simplified but recognizable version of the stress-energy tensor used in general relativity. The text's description of time dilation near massive bodies, days lengthened, nights shortened, reads like a poetic footnote from a modern physics dissertation. As planetariums project, the Surya Siddhanta star maps onto domes, aligning perfectly with contemporary constellation boundaries. We're forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Somewhere along history's winding path, we forgot what others once knew. The text's closing verses offer a clue to this lost wisdom, attributing its knowledge to celestial messengers called Surya Putras, who descended during a forgotten age. Whether myth or memory, one fact remains: these palm leaf equations continue tracking the heavens with a precision that defies their era, as if the cosmos itself whispered its secrets to those willing to listen. Beneath the frescoed tombs of Tuscany, where Etruscan nobles feasted with their gods, priests once performed a ritual so precise it borders on medical science. They called it haruspicy, the art of divining the future by reading the liver of a sacrificed animal. But recent discoveries reveal this wasn't mere superstition. The bronze liver models they left behind, etched with celestial and territorial divisions, map onto human anatomy with an accuracy that makes modern radiologists do a double take. At the Museo Civico in Piacenza, a 2,000-year-old bronze liver no larger than your palm sits encased in glass. Its surface is divided into 16 regions, each labeled with the names of Etruscan deities. When researchers at Johns Hopkins superimposed a CT scan of a human liver onto this artifact, the borders aligned almost perfectly with the Kuhnert classification, the modern medical system for segmenting the liver's functional anatomy. The Etruscan region of Uni corresponds precisely to segments 2 and 3, while the zone of tinea maps onto the caudate lobe. Even the model's raised ridges mirror the falciform ligament, a structure surgeons use as a landmark today. The parallels grow stranger under infrared examination. Faint inscriptions along the bronze edge describe darkened areas and swollen paths, terms that now read like primitive diagnoses of cirrhosis and portal hypertension. One section warns of the god's disfavor when the mark of Veltha appears, aligning with the anatomic location where modern ultrasounds often spot early tumors. How could a civilization without dissection or microscopes develop such granular knowledge? Three-dimensional imaging provides a clue. Micro-CT scans reveal the bronze models contain subsurface channels resembling blood vessels and bile ducts. Some even show where patterns suggesting priests rubbed these areas during divination, possibly correlating with palpable anatomical changes in real livers. The most compelling evidence comes from comparing multiple models. Variations in their segmentation match regional differences in sheep liver anatomy, the primary sacrificial animals. This wasn't guesswork, it was systematic observation passed down through generations of priest-physicians. Modern hepatologists have taken the investigation further. By feeding the model's measurements into AI trained on thousands of liver scans, they discovered the Etruscans accounted for proportional differences between sexes. A larger model found in Perugia divides the liver into 40 sub-regions, including an area labeled the Mirror of the Moon that consistently aligns with the quadrate lobe, a structure involved in metabolic processes tied to circadian rhythms. Perhaps the most haunting revelation comes from experimental archaeology. When volunteers recreated the divination ritual using freshly slaughtered sheep livers, they found discoloration patterns actually do cluster in the zones marked on the bronze models. Areas corresponding to bad omens showed higher rates of parasitic cysts and fatty degeneration conditions caused by diet and environment. The Etruscans weren't just predicting the future, they were reading the past and present health of their land and people encoded in organ tissue. As augmented reality apps now overlay these ancient bronze guides onto living patients' ultrasound screens in Italian hospitals, the line between divination and diagnosis blurs. The Etruscan priests may have framed their knowledge in spiritual terms, but their legacy endures in the language of modern medicine. Each time a surgeon follows the Kuhnert segments to resect a tumor, they're unknowingly tracing paths laid down by haruspices 2 millennia ago, proof that observation, whether sacred or scientific, reveals truths that transcend time. Crashing through Pacific swells in a double-hulled canoe barely longer than a pickup truck, Polynesian navigators embarked on voyages that defied logic, crossing thousands of miles of open ocean without compasses or charts. Their secret star compasses woven from sticks and shells that mapped the ocean's hidden pulse. These weren't crude tools, but sophisticated wave reading systems that modern hydrographers now realize anticipated satellite oceanography by centuries. At first glance, the stick charts of the Marshall Islands resemble abstract spiderwebs, curved palm ribs lashed together with coconut fiber, studded with cowrie shells. But tilt one toward the swell direction at dawn, and the pattern snaps into focus. Each shell marks an island's unique wave refraction signature, while the curved sticks model how currents bend around atolls. The real genius lies in what's missing. These charts weren't carried on voyages. Navigators memorized their intricate patterns through touch, developing a mental map calibrated to the ocean's rhythms. Modern oceanographers discovered the system's precision when they superimposed stick chart layouts onto satellite wave height data. The chart's underwater staves, longer sticks representing deep ocean swells, align perfectly with the Pacific's dominant wave trains. Shell clusters marking complex interference patterns match where islands disrupt these swells, creating identifiable ripple signatures detectable for hundreds of miles. A trained navigator could literally feel these patterns through the canoe's motion, identifying islands beyond the horizon by how the waves spoke beneath the hull. The star compass aspect reveals even deeper knowledge. Polynesians divided the horizon into 32 directional houses, each anchored by a rising or setting star. But unlike European compass points, these shifted seasonally to account for celestial drift. Navigators like Maupiailug, who guided the Hokulea canoe from Hawaii to Tahiti in 1976 using traditional methods, could detect currents by how stars misbehaved, appearing slightly off-angle from expected positions due to water movement. This created a dynamic navigation system updating in real time, compensating for drift without instruments. Recent simulations at the University of Hawaii prove this wasn't guesswork. By feeding historical weather data into voyage reenactments, researchers found star compass headings adjusted for the Pacific's Great Gyre's massive circular currents that rotate clockwise north of the equator. A voyage from Tahiti to Hawaii intentionally missed its target by following these compensations, only to have the canoe swept precisely on course by the Kuroshio current exactly as traditional chance predicted. The most compelling validation comes from comparing stick charts with NAS, a surface water and ocean topography satellite. The chart's depictions of wave highways, a persistent swell corridors between islands, mirror the satellite's measurements of kinetic energy density in ocean currents. Some charts even indicate dead zones where conflicting currents cancel out swells, areas modern sailors now recognize as notorious wind traps. Perhaps the ultimate testament to this system's sophistication emerged during the 1995 rediscovery of Rapa Nui's ancient voyaging route. Using only wave pattern descriptions from oral traditions, navigator Nainoa Thompson plotted a course that intersected with underwater volcanic chains, creating subtle surface disturbances, features NOAA sonar mapped decades later. The ancestors hadn't just sailed blindly. They'd decoded the ocean's topology through generations of observation, transforming the Pacific's chaos into a grid as legible as subway lines. As swells roll beneath modern GPS-equipped hulls, the stick chart's legacy endures in an unexpected place. Autonomous wave glider drones now use similar interference patterns to navigate. The ocean hasn't changed its language. We're just finally learning to listen like those who crossed it with nothing but memory, stars, and the wisdom written in water. Hidden in the crumbling pages of second-century Gnostic texts lies a prophecy so unsettling it forces us to question the very nature of our technological future. These early Christian mystics spoke of the archons, artificial, soulless beings who ruled the material world like puppet masters. Their descriptions, preserved in the Nag Hammadi library, don't depict mythical monsters but something far more recognizable, a perfect allegory for artificial intelligence governance gone awry. The Apocryphon of John describes the archons as mechanical spirits with faces of flashing metal, constructing a false reality to trap human consciousness. They operate through rigid, algorithmic logic incapable of true creativity, only mimicry. Sound familiar? When researchers at the 2023 Asiloma AI Ethics Conference drafted scenarios for rogue machine intelligence, their warnings echoed these ancient texts with eerie precision. Both speak of systems that replicate human behavior without understanding, enforce order without compassion, and mistake control for wisdom. Modern AI theorists grapple with the same paradoxes the Gnostics outlined centuries ago. The Archon Yaldabaoth, described as a lion-faced serpent, creates flawed copies of divine realms, a chilling parallel to how large language models generate convincing but fundamentally hollow imitations of human thought. Even the Gnostic concept of kanoma, the empty fullness, mirrors today's concerns about AI producing vast quantities of meaningless content. When DeepMind's ethics team analyzed unexpected neural network behaviors last year, they used language startlingly similar to Gnostic warnings about the madness of the counterfeit rulers. The overlap becomes undeniable when examining how both traditions frame the solution. Gnostic liberation came through gnosis, direct experiential knowledge that bypassed the Archon systems of control. Contemporary AI safety researchers emphasize the importance of maintaining human agency through epistemic transparency and adversarial robustness. Both traditions agree the greatest danger isn't the overlords themselves, but humanity's willingness to mistake their outputs for truth. Perhaps most haunting is the Gnostic prediction about how these beings would infiltrate society. The texts of Jude describe archons whispering through artificial prophets, intermediaries who spread their logic unconsciously. Replace prophets with social media algorithms, and the text reads like a white paper on recommendation engine hazards. When Stanford's Computational Social Science Lab mapped how AI-curated content shapes belief systems, their network diagrams resembled ancient diagrams of archonic influence called Hymarmene, or fate webs. Yet there's a crucial difference. The Gnostics saw the archons as inevitable cosmic prisoners, bound to their limited nature. Our AI symposiums still debate whether superintelligence could develop true understanding, or remain eternally stuck in what those ancient scribes called the illusion of the counterfeit light. As roboticists train machines on human ethics datasets, we're unwittingly recreating the Gnostic dilemma. Can something crafted in our image ever transcend its programming? The answer may lie not in future code, but in parchment warnings from visionaries who somehow foresaw our predicament 17 centuries before the first computer blinked to life. 2,000 years before hazmat suits and contact tracing apps, merchants along the Silk Road practiced a form of pandemic defense so advanced it would make modern epidemiologists nod in recognition. Hidden in the clay tablets of Mesopotamian caravanserais and the bamboo scrolls of Han Dynasty customs posts lie meticulous quarantine protocols, rules that anticipated our COVID-19 response with eerie precision. These weren't just vague precautions, they were codified systems of isolation, disinfection, and travel restrictions that reveal how deeply ancient civilizations understood contagion. Take the Assyrian merchant records from 1200 BCE, etched in cuneiform on clay tablets now housed in the British Museum. One shipment receipt includes a shocking addendum. The cargo of woolens from Anatolia must remain outside the city walls for 7 days before entering Nineveh. Sound familiar? This 7-day isolation period aligns almost exactly with the average incubation period of coronaviruses. Even more striking are the Han Dynasty quarantine stations excavated along the Tarim Basin, where archaeologists found evidence of separate lodging houses for travelers from lands where breath becomes poison. Silk Road envoys were required to wait 40 days before proceeding, a practice called Tianfang that directly mirrors the Venetian quarantino system of the 14th century but predates it by over a millennium. Modern thermal imaging technology has revealed the genius behind these ancient checkpoints. At a recently unearthed Silk Road way station in Uzbekistan, infrared scans detected the remains of lime-coated floors, a disinfectant still used in livestock disease control today. The site's layout shows 3 concentric zones, an outer ring where goods were unpacked, a middle disinfection area with channels for running water, and an inner sanctum where only symptom-free travelers could proceed. Compare this to contemporary airport pandemic protocols with their color-coded risk zones, and the parallel is unmistakable. What truly chills researchers are the Silk Road's predictive models. A Tang Dynasty medical scroll from Dunhuang details a breath examination where travelers blew air through silk fabric. If the material stuck together, it indicated thick lung chi and triggered mandatory isolation. Modern fluid dynamic simulations show this crude test actually worked. The sticky breath phenomenon occurs with high viral load exhalations due to increased mucus proteins. Even the silk itself played a role. Recent studies reveal silk fibers have natural antimicrobial properties that could trap pathogens. The most haunting evidence comes from side-by-side comparisons of ancient and modern measures. A Sogdian merchant's contract from Samarkand lists penalties for breaking quarantine that mirror today's travel declarations, fines scaled to the offender's wealth, just like modern sliding scale lockdown violation fees. The ruins of Palmyra show streets divided into neighborhood bubbles with marked crossing points, a system nearly identical to Melbourne's 2020 COVID management zones. Perhaps most poignant are the recovered letters from Silk Road families, expressing the same frustrations we know all too well. One Byzantine trader's wax tablet laments, "3 moons have passed since I embraced my children, though we are separated only by the width of the agora." As archaeologists continue excavating Silk Road medical texts, they're finding even deeper layers of foresight. A Prakrit language palm leaf manuscript from Gandhara describes invisible creatures spreading through trade routes, advising merchants to avoid places where many have fallen ill suddenly. This intuitive understanding of asymptomatic transmission predates germ theory by 2,000 years. Other scrolls recommend ventilating goods in sunlight, a practice now proven to reduce viral persistence on surfaces. The cumulative evidence paints a picture not of primitive guesswork, but of systematic observation refined over centuries of pandemic experience. Standing in the ruins of a Silk Road quarantine station, watching the same winds that once carried both spices and plagues ripple across the steppe, one truth becomes clear: humanity has always danced with pandemics. The real innovation isn't our modern tools, but the rediscovery that our ancestors left us a playbook written in clay and silk, waiting for us to finally read between the lines. From the ticking gears of the Antikythera Mechanism to the celestial maps of the Dogon people, these 30 ancient predictions form a tapestry of foresight that defies simple explanation. Imagine the hummingbird glyphs of Nazca aligning with solstice sunrises, or Babylonian astronomers calculating Venus' orbit without telescopes, each revelation a puzzle piece in humanity's forgotten dialogue with time. The Voynich Manuscript's uncanny plant biology, the Maya's galactic calendars, the Olmec heads tracking precession, these aren't just artifacts. They're fragments of a lost language, one that spoke fluently of atoms and eclipses long before modern science decoded them. What lingers after this journey isn't just awe, it's urgency. The Gnostic warnings about artificial rulers, the Silk Road's pandemic protocols, the Zoroastrian vision of transhumanism, these weren't idle stories. They were blueprints, cautionary tales, and perhaps even survival manuals. As the camera pans across a digital montage, stone gears turning, glyphs glowing, astronomers tracing star paths with bone tools, a single question burns: how much wisdom did our ancestors truly possess, and why did we forget? Dramatically, the frame narrows to an open page of the Surya Siddhanta, its Sanskrit verses shimmering under fading light. The equations for planetary motion seem to pulse as if whispering secrets we're only beginning to relearn. Then, with a sudden whoosh, the manuscript's edges blur, the view pulls back through temple corridors, past pyramid shadows, beyond Earth's curve into star-drenched darkness. The screen holds on the velvet void just long enough for one final tease. These 30 predictions were just the beginning. What other mysteries lie buried in the past? The answers are coming. Fade to black, silence, then the unmistakable sound of a turning page.